This program was funded by a grant from the Rural Economic and Community Development Service of the United States Department of Agriculture.
All right, now the next one you're sort of just going to have to, the word is at the beginning, so you have to read the rest of the sentence. Okay?
I try to wash that through.
Tough. That's the word tough. It has the same ending as through, but it doesn't have the H and the R.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Only now, in his 50s, is Bob Kidder coming to grips with a problem he's had all his life. Bob is learning to read, and he's not alone. At least 20% of people in Vermont are thought to have reading difficulties at some level. And nationwide, at least 23 million are functionally illiterate. If the problem is not caught in the early school years, it often goes unaddressed. Here in the Northeast Kingdom, we'll see a new program being tried in schools that hopes to make sure every child learns to read. And we'll see how libraries and adult education centers are at the forefront of the community's efforts to raise literacy levels. But it's not just reading. Better math and better communication skills are in demand in the workplace. The pressure is on adults to brush up on the basics and to learn new skills or risk losing their jobs. In local industries here too, there's a greater emphasis on worker education. But once you've left school, it can be difficult going back to learning. It requires a lot of motivation, especially if it brings back bad memories.
It just was a very frustrating experience. I knew very, very early that I couldn't read well. All they did is have you repeat and repeat and repeat. The more you repeated something, the more frustrated and angry you got. And it just didn't work.
It was because his youngest daughter had been helped to overcome early reading difficulties that Bob Kidder wondered if something could be done for him.
She's now a junior in high school. She's been on that honor society ever since. She's a very intelligent young lady. That's the real reason that I did make a phone call to St. Johnsbury Learning Center. Maybe there's a chance for me.
Bob first heard about the literacy classes while listening to a local radio station. It took him a number of attempts over several weeks to eventually take down the number off the air. When he called, he spoke to tutor Joan Collins.
We had about a 2-hour talk, and I felt very comfortable with her. I said, all right, I don't want to be in any groups. I don't want people snickering and laughing. I don't want people looking and pointing. I don't want any of that. I want just one-on-one, and I'll try it.
You just plain have to have the time and the resources to devote one-on-one to an individual until they get over the hump to where they can blend in with a group. And then the group can be quite powerful. He could not really read at all, but now he can read the newspaper, he can read a book if he wants to, he can write a letter if he wants to. And I suppose I just lucked out. I picked the right series of books to use because everybody's different and learns differently, and that was just what he needed. At the time, I had no clue as to whether he was dyslexic. It turns out he is, but at the time I just tried it and it worked. He is part Abnaki, and Black Elk Speaks was his first book. The stories really inspired him.
I read every day, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. I find it's a whole new world. I mean, I understand so much more, so much happier. People don't understand the anger. A very, very deep anger. With a lot of things. Frustration, and you could just scream inside. I have done this. I've walked in the woods, gone off by myself. Building near a cemetery. And sometimes I walk there. My tutor was telling me that the most difficult words to understand are people's names. And I started reading the names on the gravestones. And I discovered that I could read more and more of the names. It was kind of a strange feeling. Society puts people with learning disabilities in a closet, in the dark, and they get comfortable in there, and they hide. They just stay there. They want to stay there, in effect, but they're pretty sad inside.
Over the years, Bob has found various ways to overcome his difficulties. He uses a machine to help him spell correctly.
Daisies.
Daisies.
And despite his illiteracy, he managed to run a successful business as a building contractor.
The numbers were no problem. It was the written word. So if you wanted a pipe wrench, you drew a pipe wrench.
He had to order materials for his job, and he had a tape recorder in his truck, and he would speak into the tape recorder and say what he needed so that when he got to the store, he would be able to pick up the right things and the right amounts.
For a long time, Bob even kept his illiteracy a secret from his children.
He's now concerned that his grandson isn't going to have this problem. He reads to his grandson. He thinks that if he intervenes early enough, there will not be that issue.
It's still extremely uncomfortable to read to somebody else. Writing is extremely hard, but it's coming along. One thing I never thought I'd ever do is write a poem.
He just brought it in, and I read it, and I was just blown away because it had 3 levels of meaning. It was about a blackbird getting caught in a chimney or falling into a chimney, and he equated that to being a person that can't read in a society where everybody else, he thought, could read, and that the person is like that blackbird in the dark hole and wants out but doesn't know how to get out.
I bumped and banged and hit the bottom. The doors are opening, and I'm going to be set free. And this is about how I feel right now.
Mm-hmm. He wants to write his story. He wants people in his situation to know there is help out there. I'd say he's gained a lot of confidence. He was more or less trying to hide before, and now he can read whatever he wants to read.
To be able to read in that menu rather than, oh, I'll have a hamburger, that's really nice. Often I'll go down to McDonald's, grab the newspaper before somebody else does, and just sit there and read the newspaper. The newspaper is written at about level 6, and I can handle level 6 pretty well now. So for the most part, I can go through and get all the points of that story. What I want to do is to help someone get out of a closet, to understand that they can do things that they never thought they could, and it really will work. I know it does. I've been there. I've been on both sides. I know it'll work, because it's worked for me.
It's difficult to know how many Bob Kidders there are out there, but around 80,000 Vermonters are thought to lack literacy skills to some degree.